On today's Minute of the Apes, do you have authorization to dress him like that? Is a question I get every time I take Chris out.
Wow.
Exercise with an ape maker, human down. It talks. Gravity is of the divine bound. We are determined to know what the apes want, war or peace.
The only good human is a dead human.
And if it is man's destiny one day to be dominated, then, oh, please, God, let him be dominated by such as you.
Hello and welcome to Minute of the Apes, a daily podcast where we break down every minute of the Planet of the Apes movies 1 minute at a time. I'm Todd. That's Sean.
Heyo.
And are we dressed okay to be with you this morning?
You're fine. I almost actually came in pajamas. I really thought about it this morning.
You should have.
Yeah.
I am wearing my sweatpants.
You do have a shorter haircut than last time I saw you.
Well, he shaved his head a
I
couple
had a
weeks
Brittany
ago.
Jean moment that we'll talk about in between.
Okay. So how long has it been since we wrapped Escape?
That would have been the last decade.
It would have been November-ish, right?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
So it's been a couple months since I've seen you, and when you walked in, I went, oh. Yeah, I haven't seen you in the in-between, and not our in-betweens.
Right.
But, yeah, it was kind of surprising. So, yeah, I want to hear the story of what happened. We're only 2 away from that.
I know, it's
Ooh,
Thursday.
I can't wait.
Almost
I'm
there.
excited.
Gonna make me cry again.
Okay.
It's all right.
So, well, if it's bad, you don't have to tell me.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Okay.
I had a moment. It actually leads into what we were talking about.
When Sean was away.
Correct.
Boy, this
Yes.
is tantalizing to the people out there. They're going, what? What are you talking about? Yeah, but Richard and I had a conversation. We'll jump into that
All right.
with in between.
It kind of fed into the fact that I don't have any hair right now.
Well,
right.
so we had to, real quick, we had to be careful with teasing our in-betweens because what we're going to do this
they're
time
gonna be
around, we're
different.
starting this is January 26th, end of January. We're doing this with the hopes of launching the new season in about 6 to 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to go ahead and the in-betweens we record, we're going to release them as we go so that they're relevant. So when you hear this, go back and listen to the in-between
Go.
a little while back.
So, yeah, when you hear this, go back about a month.
Oh, my God. Now we're doing the exact opposite of what we were doing before, which was teasing things that had already happened and we talked about. Anyway, Sean, tell us what's going on with Minute 4 of Conquest.
All right, we're starting Minute 4 with Armando and the ape still next to the helicopter and ends with Armando telling the chimp to walk more like a primitive chimpanzee.
Let's take a listen to Minute 4 of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Come.
Do you have authorization to dress him like that?
Oh, yes, sir.
A circus ape, huh?
I'm the only one ever to have been trained as a bareback rider in the entire history of the circus.
No.
Circuses are past history.
Not while I live and breathe.
All right, Senor Armando, go ahead.
Thank you. Come. Come. Did I do all right?
Yes. But try to walk a little more like a primitive chimpanzee.
As in Minute 4, we've got a courtyard's worth of gorillas and chimpanzees. Whoever Armando is with, and I'm assuming a planet's worth of humans, even though we've only seen a handful of them.
So,
So, the guards.
okay, yeah, go. I was trying to make a thought, and it wasn't
So the
happening.
guards,
go.
whenever Armando shows up with a chimp, why do they just decide to switch places? Have you noticed that? It's like, hey, let's swap spots.
No, I had that moment. I had that moment where we saw the two guards. They did. They literally they checked the businessman in, and then the two guards. One walks kind of in front of the other one, and he's seriously watching what's happening with Armando and we assume Milo at this point. What was interesting to me is the next line. Do you have authorization to dress him like that? And maybe that was it. They're not used to seeing an ape not dressed in the green or
in the speed
red.
suits or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. So I get that that's what they're trying to say, but there is something coming next week that kind of counters that. And when we get to it, I want to point that out, that this whole idea that they're not used to seeing anything dressed other than that, or maybe they are. Maybe they do see apes dressed in different ways, but you have to have a permit for it. Maybe that is just a common thing. So
I mean, he's in some sweet black pants and a nice leather jacket.
He looks hot for a chimp.
Yeah, he's about to go to the club. He looks
Right.
good. He's got a chain on. He's probably going to the church. I'm not really sure,
So
it's a type of alternative club.
I have to tell a story
From a long time
that
ago.
really goes back to quite a few years back when our friend Enright had that little taco place down in Deep Ellum. Deep Ellum being a cool little place in Dallas that's kind of an artsy area. There was a taco, what would you call it? It was almost like an RV that converted.
It was a Airstream or something like that was converted into
a pre-food truck food truck.
Yeah.
And so our friend had this, and we went down one night to help, not to help, but to support, to buy things. And my wife does not tolerate people being avant-garde for the sake of being avant-garde. And suddenly she turns around, and all I hear Shelly say is, "What the fuck?" And I'd look around, and it's some girl with another girl walking one on the chain. And she's like, "Come on, doggy." Yeah. Were you there that night?
Yeah, I think it was a cat, though. They were
Was that what it was?
Like, meow.
And I remember Shelly looking and just going, I got to go. But that's as soon as I saw Roddy in the chain, I wanted to call Shelly and go, hey, look, it's your kids from Deep Ellum. What? You don't does the chain
Richard,
bother you?
No,
that's probably a mild story for Richard.
No, we're in an era of people with alternative relationships that I'm not really understanding or fully, and I know some people that are in relationships like that.
Today?
Yes.
Look, if you're not hurting me and you're not
Two
really hurting
consenting
somebody,
adults can do whatever the fuck they want.
But at the same time, you look and you go, what?
I'm still a little judgy.
It's
not my life. It's not my life, but I'm still a little judgy.
I see you
That's
looking
all.
past me to JJ. Is JJ making rolling eyes and
making a
faces?
face, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I try not to judge people, but when I do see people pulling another one on a chain, I'm like, what? I don't quite get that.
This is like the in between for next week. Like, let's stick to this minute.
Let's just cancel this podcast and just do one called In Between.
So speaking of people on chains, what I noticed about young Milo on a chain being led by Armando is, man, that is not a chain that would work on my dog.
That was a very little faint chain.
It was very slight.
Right.
It wouldn't have really held an animal if they were trying to escape, or a pet that was trying to escape. I saw that and I'm like, my dog would wiggle out of that in a second and run off.
Well, I thought today if you...
Huh?
No, I don't think
probably
it was
not.
It's a tiny. I mean, it's a tiny little chain. Like, it's that you see them at the pet stores, and you're like, that's not going to hold nothing.
Yeah, the moment that dog lurches for anything, or you need to pull it along or something, snap.
I mean, let me go back and say I would not put my dog on a chain, but I certainly wouldn't expect to control a dog with a chain like that.
You wouldn't put it on a chain? Is a chain different than a regular leash?
I like something a little more softer. I would use like a harness or.
But this movie's got us talking about some weird things.
You don't be choked out. Come on.
Today, if you made that movie, really to make it seem that Milo was being controlled, he would have a harsh lock collar.
Yeah.
You would see that.
You'd
see a thick
really,
chain, and you would the tug and the sound of the chain would be half of the oppression.
Well, and that's why this looks decorative,
right?
Which it looks because he's also dressed so nicely. Mm-hmm. Why the stark contrast of the chain, but it's a dainty chain to the way he's dressed.
Right.
Lets us know that this isn't really aggressive.
Well, even the sound,
for show,
the sound that goes along with it, whether they captured that. I can't imagine they captured that while they're shooting on that roof, because that roof
over the helicopter. Yeah,
they would ADR that. That's so noisy up there. But what the sound they use literally sounds like a piece of twine against leather. It's kind of like,
yeah,
it's very faint itself.
So what we do get in this minute is a couple of nods. When we saw Armando, which
last time we saw him,
but characters play actors play other characters in this franchise, so we can't necessarily assume that it's Armando per se. We think that it is, but we do get confirmation in this minute.
Yeah, once he starts talking about bareback riders.
He says, do you have authorization to dress him? And he goes, yes, sir. He pulls out kind of some documents, and he goes, a circus ape. All right, circus ape. So
Yep.
now we know it's Armando.
It's 100% him.
He then 2 seconds later he calls him, all right, Senor Armando, go ahead. So now we're connecting that these are characters from the previous movie. Because otherwise we didn't have that. Otherwise it was a jump that we didn't know was happening 20 years later. I did like, I found interesting the circuses are past
history. Yeah,
circuses are past history. So in the 20 years that have happened, circuses have become kind of minimal, which is kind of true for modern era. Circuses aren't quite what they used to be. And there's even a movement now to kind of move beyond zoos and circus animals because of the abuses of the use of the training of the animals.
Right.
But ours is more of kind of a modern social
sensibility to it.
Sensibility, social movement versus they're just no longer trendy or popular. But
Well, they're no longer that way because we've taken them and put them into servitude.
we've taken the apes and so on and put them in servitude. So circuses are well, I guess I can get to this next minute. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
It's one of those that's a pretty quick little minute when you get down to what happens in it. The one thing that I find when we get to the walk more primitive.
Yeah.
So there is Armando all but telling us what we observed at the front.
It's Milo.
Well, not only that look, the apes that are here are primitive.
Yeah, they're not smart. Yeah.
It wasn't just us thinking, oh, they kind of walking like that. They are supposed to be primitive apes that have not evolved to the point that he has, obviously, because he has the lineage of his parents coming here.
They're all
passing on.
Salamés. They're not Milos.
That's right. Look at you drawing on the name from the last movie.
So 15 seconds into it, we're resuming the shots that we saw in the first couple of minutes with the training gorillas and chimpanzees. And we get this upward angle up close to, I'm going to call him Milo, and a security guard's shoulder. And it's done for like 5 or 6 seconds. And I honestly wish they'd saved those moments, those shots for this moment here, because it would have felt so much more sinister and upsetting. I mean, it's just this shot of Milo / Roddy looking up as he's kind of bumped up against the security guard's shoulder.
Yeah.
And I wish that had been saved for this moment because it's upsetting. And he seems like a threat.
Right.
And
there's Thompson once again. Whether where it's put, regardless, the shots that he's considering, because right there it's a faceless threat, but it is a threat. It's interesting shot selection is all I'm trying to say.
He then does something interesting where he sniffs the security guard's sleeve and kind of acts very primitive. And then Armando kind of pulls him back a little bit and tells the guard that everything's fine, the officer.
Well, speaking of shots, we know this is a Planet of the Apes movies because they show them walk down the entire set of stairs. They don't, no cuts, nothing. They have to show the entire action. Yeah.
All right, so it pretty much ends after the comment about try to walk more like a primitive chimp, correct?
But from what I can see, Milo looks like he's walking just like all the other chimps and all the other gorillas in the beginning of the movie. I think if Armando had not said that, we would not have thought that he was walking incorrectly.
We wouldn't have, but, it begins the question right away of why is he having to educate him how to act like others?
When he's 19 years old or whatever, yeah.
So has he never seen other apes, outside of the circus environment? Those are the questions right away when I hear try to act more primitive. Is he not aware? Is this his first time to come to this environment?
Is this his first rodeo?
And they don't spell that out, but that was the implication that off of that one comment that came to mind.
If you're listening and you're just listening and not able to see the visual, they actually leave the security guards. They walk down a stairwell. The shot, again, of course, is of boots and this oppressive military presence as they kind of get down to the bottom of the stairwell. It's still shot from those angles where we have objects in the way of our focus. They get down to the bottom, and that's when you hear this dialogue. They're now kind of hush-talked, like you're
right.
Did I do all right? Try to walk a little more primitive. Like, clearly now this is an act. Him tapping on the
helicopter at the beginning.
Doors and being kind of dumb and sniffing the security guard. All those moments are just an act.
And it's also the first acknowledgement. 100%. I think those of us that like these movies that are here talking and listening can tell that's Roddy right away. We know that's who, you can tell even the face that's who it is. But it is the first acknowledgement for the person who doesn't think like that this is a talking chimp, that here comes the Planet of the Apes